Press play on the Inside Sales Show.
Powered by the Sales IQ Network.
My name is Darryl. I'm your host, and you, my friend, you and I, we're going to go on a journey every single week talking to the industry's most accomplished sales legends as they share with us their tips, their tricks, their techniques, and their tactics to become sales rock stars. You simply need to do what they're doing, and you will achieve similar nirvana. If you like to laugh, you like to be entertained, if you like to go off on tangents and tell stories, you're going to love what you're going to hear next. Sit back, relax, it's going to get real. Oh, my friends. You know, it's interesting. We are the sum of our experiences. Would you agree with that? We are the sum of our experiences. If we had a traumatic childhood, then it's more than likely that we have difficulty trusting as an adult. We may want to protect ourselves and keep people at a certain distance. If we were the last person picked for every single sports team ever growing up, we may have a little bit of insecurity now as an adult, even though we're no longer going through the ugly puberty stage and we're actually kind of successful and we're actually not the most ugly person going. All right. We are the sum of our experiences. And what's interesting is that continues to manifest itself over and over and over again as we grow. I have multiple situations I can point to. I can point to both on a personal and on a professional level. Tell me if this is something you can relate to. I remember, now my wife and I, we've been married at this point in time 33 years. Now, yes, she clearly has bad judgment and she might want to reconsider this investment of time. But here we are 33 years later. However, the story goes that in our 11th year of marriage, we came incredibly close to divorce. And I don't mind sharing this. Everybody knows it, who knows me. And why is that? Well, we looked at the situation and we said, do we need a marriage counselor? Because we still loved each other, but we were having difficulties living with one another. And after discussion, we didn't think we did. What we thought was interesting was and now in my early 30s at that point in time, was exhibiting behaviors that I could probably point back to my childhood, as was she. And so we decided to individually go see a counselor and work on some of those issues that were part of our experiences that were affecting how we behaved now. And what happens is as you get older, some of those behaviors become more pronounced. And so for us, some time spent with some professionals who knew how to work the process was wonderful. Total sidebar. I remember my therapist doing an exercise with me that they probably teach on the second day in university, which was, she said, Darryl, go write your obituary. And I write my obituary? Yeah, write your obituary. And so I'm like, okay. So I go and I write my obituary and I come back next week and I say, here's my obituary, read it to me. I read it to them. And they're like, okay, so basically, Darryl, you're a loving father, a devoted husband, well-liked. You made an impact on people's lives, and you'll be missed. That's not the gist of it? Yeah, that's the gist of it. Okay, well, nowhere in that obituary, Darryl, did you talk about your work? About all your accolades? About whether you hit quota or didn't hit quota? About whether you were speaking on stage or not speaking on stage? That wasn't in there. Yet if I watch how you're living your life and what's affecting your marriage, you are heavily focused on your work. Why is that, Darryl? And you're like, son of a gun. All right, so that's an experience. That's one experience. It's a personal experience. Just showing you how we are the sum of our experiences. On a professional side, I've done sales, I've done marketing, been VP sales, VP marketing, chief sales officer, chief revenue officer. I know a thing or two about revenue. That sounds obnoxious, not meant to sound obnoxious, meant to set the stage. Yet for 10 years, I had my own agency, my own marketing agency. And I was a marketing agency selling to B2B businesses, typically marketers, for my services. And I would try to focus on, mid-market. That was I didn't want to go small to medium. For me, I didn't want to go enterprise. And despite having all these skills, it was the most challenging situation ever because I had great difficulty initially, the first couple years, not couple months, separating myself from others. I had difficulty procuring new business. Much of my business was word of mouth because I had a positive reputation, which is fantastic. And I got referred into other accounts. As happens, that's the normal, but that's the reality. So because of that experience, I now am very cautious when I take on a new opportunity in my life, my professional life, that has me selling in a high commodity, highly competitive, difficult to separate yourself from others. Basically what people might describe as the red waters as opposed to the blue water. The red waters where everybody's kind of fighting over the same chunk of meat, if you will, and the blood is in the water. And there's lots of sharks. I tend to want to avoid that. Even this most current job I took, that was a conversation I had with my CEO, my soon-to-be CEO, Emmerich Renault. And I said, Emmerich, I see Agorapol, it's a cool company. I love the culture. I love the product. I mean, I love everything about it. But Emmerich, there's this product called Hootsuite. There's this product called Sprout Social. Like, it's a bit of a commodity business, isn't it? What's special and what's different about you? And Emmerich said, well, Darryl, under our NDA, let me show you this piece of technology and feature function we're about to release. And I saw it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, nobody's doing that. It's a game changer. And I took the job. I took the job because I thought I can work for that. It's a little more blue water, a little less red water. We are the sum of our experiences. Our experiences drive what we do. But sometimes when you're in the middle of that experience, you're like, what do I do? All right. So, for example, many of you are exactly where I have been, where you're selling an item where there's a lot of competition, there's a lot of noise, and you're struggling with how do you stand apart? How do you generate new business? How do you hit quota? How do you, hit your revenue targets so you can get that paycheck? How do you stand above the crowd so you can continue your career? How? Well, with that all said, I think we need to talk to somebody who has done that, who is living that, who understands exactly the pain you're going through. Not only does he understand the pain you're going through, he's living it himself every single day. And today, I'm really excited to bring to you the one, the only, the amazing Christian Banach. Christian, how are you doing, my friend?
I am doing fantastic, Darryl. Thank you so much for having me on. Super excited to be here and talk to your audience here.
All right. So when I tell these stories, and those who listen to the show on a regular basis knows these stories are all based on 90+% truth and, maybe 10% hyperbole, because I wouldn't be a good marketer with a little bit of storytelling, creative freedoms. Were you sitting here thinking to yourself, oh my God, he's having me on a show and he's calling me a commodity? Or were you sitting here thinking to yourself, I can get into this because I can help these people?
I get super jazzed up by this because it's something that's near and dear to my heart. It's something that we have to face on a day-to-day basis for the sales and marketing of our own company. And it's something we face on a day-to-day basis for each one of our clients. The market is super competitive for what we do and for what our clients do. So it's critical that we tackle this and really try to stand out in order to drive the results.
All right. So for those wondering, Christian is the Principal and Chief Growth Officer, Christian Banach. It's his own company that he founded about a year and a half ago at this moment in time. This is not his first time being self-employed and having his own company, so he knows the what's involved. But what's interesting about Christian, and one of the reasons that he was so attracted to me, was because the company is somewhat still young. It's a year and a half old, so it doesn't have an established inbound reputation out there that I can rely upon to be a constant source. And with that said, he's got to go and very much grow his own business, his own reputation, and differentiate from scratch. So this is the guy. Now, with that said, let's just continue with me totally both highlighting what he does, but helping you better understand his circumstances. So, Christian, why don't I let you explain to the crew here exactly what it is Christian Banach does. And then when he tells this, folks, you're going to go, oh, I see what you mean, but that is a competitive marketplace. So go for it.
So I'll start off with before we differentiate ourselves, at the end of the day, we're a lead generation company. And I'm sure everybody has been the recipient of emails or have seen advertisements that say, we're going to get you X number of leads and fill your pipeline and messaging like that, right? We've all seen them, we've all experienced them. So that's the business that I'm in. And there's a lot of what I would call maybe bad actors in the space that don't provide very good quality services. A lot of it may be outsourced to far off lands. So it's not always considered in the highest regard. However, there are certainly firms out there, and we believe we're one of them, that actually do provide a very high level of service to our clients, and we really serve a great function. So at the most basic level, we are a lead generation company. But how we've started to differentiate ourselves, and this is why I'm going to start to sell the story here, we are a business development and growth consultancy. That's how we position ourselves. So we don't say we're a lead gen company. And we help advertising and marketing agencies, along with MarTech companies, to land 6- and 7-figure opportunities predictably. And we do that through a proactive outbound prospecting approach. So that's through cold calling, cold email, and social media engagement to ultimately schedule appointments between decision makers at enterprise companies and our clients, which are, again, those advertising and marketing agencies and MarTech companies.
Okay, so there you go. That's what his firm does. And I mean, let's just think about, okay, I know you guys are frustrated sometimes selling what you sell. Think about Christian. He said it right there. He was so eloquent how he said it. There are some bad actors. I love that phrase. There are some bad actors in the industry, and that affects and impacts us and our initial perceived reaction when we're out prospecting. But I love his differentiator. See how you went right? I didn't even ask him. He said, but our differentiator is, we are a business development and growth company. We're not a lead gen company. We are a business development and growth company focused on advertising and marketing companies and MarTech companies land 6- and 7-figure deals. Boom. Boom. Mic drop. Like, he knows who he is. There's no ambiguity there. Okay, so with that, what we're going to do is we're going to do something a little different that we've never done before. We're going to walk through, and Christian's going to help us understand, essentially how he gets new business and the challenges he faces and what tools and techniques he uses that are helping him be successful. And I want you to think about this, okay? Christian is got beyond being in a commodity space, beyond being bad actors, he's selling a product to his buyer who does the same thing already. In other words, he is a marketer, he is a sales. They are selling to MarTech companies, they're selling to marketing and advertising companies who themselves do marketing and advertising for lead gen, who are MarTech companies who themselves are used for lead gen, which means the executives he's selling to claim to have the same skills he has, which means they're scrutinizing how good he is as part of that due diligence process. He has got everything stacked against him, and he's being incredibly successful. So sit back, boys and girls, and let's go on a journey, and let's see what Christian can teach us all from the man himself. Christian, where do you want to start with this story?
Yeah, well, we can start. I think when we're talking about, this is true for ourselves and through our clients, we drink our own Kool-Aid here. So our primary source of business development for ourselves is through outbound prospecting. I think it would be odd if I was to tell you we run radio ads and that's where we get our clients from, yet we tell our clients they should be outbound prospecting. So yes, so we drink our own Kool-Aid here, and it's outbound prospecting is our number one source. And where do we begin, though, with outbound prospecting? And I think for us and for our clients, we always start to focus first and foremost on the problem that we solve for clients. And that is critical. It's not we can send you X number of emails or all of the outputs that you might get from a campaign. It's really about how we can help solve a pain point that somebody's experiencing. So in our situation, we get very granular. We have taken a look at the market, so the advertising and marketing agencies, and what are the problems that they're experiencing when it comes to growth. And then we will build specific outbound campaigns that drill down into how, hey, we think you might be experiencing this problem, and we have some ideas around how to solve that problem. We've done it for others in your space. So that's really the first thing that we look at, is really understanding, is there a pain point, and can we solve that pain point for somebody?
Can I stop you there for a second? I find too many of the sales reps in my audience and in my experience don't look at it as what's the pain point I'm solving. And yet, they look at it as, I've got a feature, I've got a service, it does this. In other words, if I was selling Agorapulse, I've got a social media management tool that will help you listen to all your people out there and then monitor it, and then you can reply to it, and you can schedule your posts, and you can, whatever. And I'm right away into the features. I'm feature pitching. Just like you talked about, it's not about the activity or the outputs, but about addressing the pain or addressing the problem. So how did you figure out the problem that you solve? How did you actually identify what it is? How would you coach my sales audience to identify the problem that they solve?
Yeah. So I think there's a variety of ways. One of the best ways that you can do it is just hearing directly from prospects. So if you have the luxury at least to already have some sort of a pipeline going and there's some activity happening, really listening into those calls that are already happening and people that you're speaking to, and hearing what those pain points are. Are there any recurring themes? Now, you may not have that luxury, so you may want to go out and try to schedule some stakeholder type interviews and try to then again get to understanding their world and what are some of the experiences that they're having right now, and some challenges. What's keeping them up at night? That may not be available to everybody either. So the internet is a great place to go to and start searching. In my case, it's very easy to go and Google, marketing agency challenges and marketing agency problems. And there are other third-party resources out there that have done surveys, and you can find different articles about it, podcasts like this, where you can listen in and find out what are some of the challenges that those are facing. And I think that really is probably true of any industry. I mean, if you can hear it directly, that's great. If you can talk to past clients or former clients, that's great. And then doing some third-party research and start to really see what those themes are that seem to keep emerging.
I love that. Okay, so folks, you've heard me say this over and over again. I get redundant sometimes. I don't know why you still listen to me, because I'm like a broken record. Have you talked to some of your current customers, or as Christian was talking about, even just, figure out who your ICP is and go after them and talk to them, even if they're not your customers, but they fit your target market, to look for recurring themes, recurring comments. And I love the fact, for many of you won't do that. You say, well, I don't have time, or I'm shy, which is weird because you're in sales, or we're new, we don't have a lot of customers, therefore maybe it's not a big enough sample size. Okay, fine. He took away all your excuses when he simply said, I got on the internet, www, and I did some research, and it was crazy talk. And I can talk, I can go on social to all my key people and look at what they're talking about, my target customers. I can look at their content. I can look at industry reports. I can look at analyst reports. I can look at surveys. Hell, you can call the customers up of your perceived competitor and ask them why they're with them, why they chose them. Because if, chances are you're going to be able to fix the same problem. So there's no excuse for not knowing that. But once you understand the problem, one of the things that Christian hasn't mentioned yet is that not only do you understand the problem, you also start to pick up the lingo, the vernacular, the verbiage. And now you get stories that you can start to drop in to make yourself sound way more credible when you're doing that prospecting. And that's huge, because then if you're speaking the same language I'm speaking in my day-to-day activity, you must be one of my tribe. And now I automatically start to trust you right away. So I love that you're doing that. You're doing the problem. Now, okay, you know your problem. Now, you mentioned your biggest one is outbound prospecting. Talk to me about the outbound prospecting tactics and techniques you do, the challenges you had differentiating. Help us understand that a little more.
Yeah, so with our outbound prospecting, we're sending out cold emails, we are placing cold calls. But as everybody knows, and I'm sure we're all on the receiving end, our inboxes are busier than ever. We're all receiving, lots of email communications, and our buyers are likely getting even more. So how do you stand out in the inbox, first and foremost, so they even read your message? So one of the things that we do for ourselves, and we advise our clients as well, is personalization, is first and foremost. I think these day and age, everybody can sniff a sales email, a marketing email away from a mile away. So in order to stand out, you have to do some level of personalization. So, we highly advise, and we do for ourselves, is we do some research into each company, and we find out something that's happening that's related to that problem that they may be experiencing. And we use that information then to customize a subject line and customize that first opening, sentence or two of the email. So that individual who gets that error in the inbox, knows that it's unmistakably written, for them and for their company. And that has really helped us, achieve incredible open rates compared to industry averages, which then, is leading to much better results overall.
When you do that and you eventually close that deal, do you ever get feedback from your new customers about what about you prompted them to respond to your outbound efforts? Because to your point, they get a lot of outbound, attempts for them to become customers of other vendors. Do they share with you why you?
Yeah, we hear a couple of different things. So one is we oftentimes hear, we don't normally respond to messages like this, but yours caught my eye because of A, B, C, right? And usually that A, B, C has something to do with the personalization, that we took the time to sit down and write something to them. So that's one of the big reasons. I think the other, related in the emails, getting them to open it and read the first sentence is one thing, but then they got to read on. And another very important thing is to keep your messages short. We are writing our emails at less than 100 words, and that's not easy necessarily to do when you are going to try to demonstrate personalization. You're going to poke at the problem, you're going to introduce your solution, and then there's a call to action in the email. Those are the four kind of tenets of a good cold email. So to do that all in 100 words isn't easy, but it can be done, and it takes some refining and takes some editing, but that email, and keeping it short and concise and to the point, and casual in tone as well. You don't want to be super formal in the messaging. Our research shows that you want to keep messages written at maybe like a 6th grade level or below, and you got to just think about how our prospects now engaging with email. They're probably reading it on their phone, they're running from meeting to meeting. This is not a college thesis paper that you're trying to write them. You are writing something very casual to start a conversation with them. You're not trying to sell them anything in this first email. So that is another thing that comes up again and again for people that respond and say, hey, we don't normally respond, but this is why. You were personalized, you sound real and authentic, and we figured, what the heck, let's give it a shot.
All right, so let's just start recapping here, folks. We're just going to build on this. You're selling in a highly competitive market. You got other vendors you're up against. You get some bad actors who are making your life difficult. What's the answer? The answer is you understand the pain points of your customers. To do that, you do your own quick little dirty research, and you can continue to optimize that. You gather up some stories. You understand how they speak, the language they use, and then you go and you do active outbound, including keeping emails short, less than 100 words. That's what my alarm bells are going off, because I'm like, yes, because I can skim through that very quickly on my phone, which is where they're likely consuming it, and keeping it very casual. To that, I mean, think about it. Let me share, I'm a guy. Christian would likely look at me as a prospect. And if he was prospecting me, because, I'm a head of marketing, for example, I get so many bad outreaches that when I get a good, professional, polished outreach, that alone stands out from the crowd. He's not wasting my time. He understands my role. He understands my pain. He understands my how I speak. I'm not shocked that he says, we don't normally respond to this, but yours stood out. So let me ask you this, Christian. How do you balance activity quantity versus outreach quality? Because quality takes time. That affects the quantity. What have you seen work well?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a balance because you could spend hours probably researching a company and trying to come up with the perfect nugget. But is the juice worth the squeeze? To send out a couple emails a day, but you're researching for 2 hours. You're not going to hit your numbers that way. So we really try to codify kind of the process that we use to find these insights. LinkedIn is obviously a great resource to go to right out of the gates, looking and seeing if somebody has posted something recently. We think of it almost as a continuum. If that prospect has posted something, we call it self-authored content. So they've been on a podcast, they posted something about something that's happening at the organization. Those are really, really great nuggets to look for first. Now, if you don't find anything that is personalized, and we're talking, this is a quick scan on LinkedIn. You should spend no more than a minute to look and see, have they actually posted something? If they haven't, then you want to turn your attention more towards the company itself. What's happening at the company level? And again, it's a quick looking on LinkedIn. It's a quick Google search, company name, and maybe what your organization does. So that's a quick look, and you're looking to see if anything's happened on more of a company level then. So the process, once you get into the flow and it works, and I think every organization that's listening in probably has different resources that they would want to look at, but you should be spending I would say maybe 10 minutes tops on doing the research, and then you start writing the message. If you're spending more than that, you're either looking in the wrong spot, you don't have a good process in place, or you're just kind of avoiding trying to do the work. Which I do see happen sometime as well. So you just want to get a process in place, have some places that you typically go, and spend no more than 10 minutes doing the research portion of it.
So if I do the math, we'll say 10 minutes max before you, send the message, send the email, whatever it might be. For simple math, that's 6 per hour. Is that right? That's 6 per hour. Yeah, that's my math says it's 6 per hour. Let's say even 15 minutes. Just have some fun. Say it's 15 minutes. It's 4 per hour. So in an 8-hour day, that's still 48. So we'll say 50. That's a lot. That's a lot if you were to do that. That's highly personalized, highly relevant outreach attempts. Now, I'm curious. You made mention earlier about that you convert much higher than the average because of what you're doing, and that's also a promise you make to your prospects as well, that your future customers, that if you engage this is the results that'll happen. How do you tend to measure yourselves and validate that you're doing this right? And when do you adjust your tactics, your techniques, your approaches, your methods to because maybe suddenly they stop working for whatever reason?
So we get this question a lot, like what should we be converting, and because we have the liberty of looking at a lot of our client data, we have some general benchmarks on where you should be converting and how many of those emails that you send out should be coming back as what we call a positive reply, because there are going to be replies that say, take me off your list, I'm not interested, go to hell. You're going to get some of those as well. That's just part of the business. So we really measure what the positive replies are. And the percentages are going to range from, if you're doing enterprise, it's going to be much lower than small business. If you're doing certain industries are tougher to break into. So we have a general guideline that we look for our clients. But again, the idea here is that you just want to measure it, get a couple hundred emails out and then improve upon it. And it doesn't really matter where you stack up against others in the space. It might be a guidepost, but you just want to constantly iterate and get a little bit better every time. And if you're just trying to outdo yourself every time, eventually over a period of a few weeks or a few months, you're going to have a really high performing campaign. And I think that's been a key for us. And the way we look at things is we build everything out in what we call sprints. So we do 30-day sprints where we'll have a certain message, we put it into market, and then we test and we learn and we see what the response rates are, what are the conversion rates that are actually happening from those emails, what are some of the feedback that we're getting from that. And then the next month, we're going to make some tweaks to our overall message and our process based on the learnings that we had from the prior month. And we do that on a month-to-month basis.
A lot of reps don't measure. A lot of reps don't iterate. They simply get frustrated and they say it's not working, and that's where as far as they go. And that is, I mean, we just heard Christian say we do 30-day sprints. You were creating these, sufficiently relevant sample sizes that we can then optimize and iterate the process, review what works, let's optimize it, let's try it again. And we're always looking to gain a percentage or 2 points of improvement every iteration. And that just comes by actually being intentional, putting it in your calendar that it's time to go and review the results and what do I need to do, where do I need to optimize to get better results, as opposed to just saying, I don't know, it's not working, I'm just going to guess. It's about being intentional. I love that you're doing that. Everything I'm hearing about you, I can totally see why your customers buy from you and sign you up and trust you, because it's such a methodical, intentional, logical, easily provable approach. And if I'm being prospected by you with that approach, then I trust you. And we haven't talked about that. I trust you because of your actions, but what are you doing to build trust with your prospects, Christian, so that when you get to the point where you're in an active sales opportunity and do they sign or not sign? And that's when really the trust factor really kicks in. So what are you doing to build that trust with them?
Yeah. Well, I think let's start even from the beginning. I think there are certain elements that you can do even in your cold outreach to start to build that trust. And one of it is trying to be relevant to them with clients that you've served that are similar to them. So when we're reaching out, for example, to agencies and MarTech companies, I'm going to reference that we've worked with this agency, that agency, and the other agency, which then builds some familiarity. And, if they're doing it for them, maybe they could do it for me. And I think it's really important to try to be relevant in who you name. It wouldn't be relevant if I mentioned, a garbage disposal company when I'm reaching out to an advertising agency. They won't see the connection point. So I think that credibility and that trust starts from the beginning. I think it also then, once you actually land the meeting, then there is a whole other set of other things that have to do. And, number one, I think is saying what you, doing what you say. So if you say that you're going to meet at a certain time, you show up, you're on time, you are prepared for that meeting, you've done your homework. I think that is also key. I can't tell you also how many times I run across people that they don't follow through with what they said that they're going to follow through with. So I think that is really key. If you have then case studies and other sorts of sales assets that can help prove your claim, that will also help build credibility and trust with the prospect. So I think those are a couple things that come to mind, kind of more so before the deal is signed that you can start to think about and really start to build that trust with the prospect. I think there's really, you got to think about it before the sale, during, the engagement, during the pitch in the meeting, and then even after, what are you going to do to keep that trust alive with your client?
I'm taking furious notes here because I love what you're saying. You've said a lot. One of the things that really jumped out at me was you said, trust starts with being prepared, and it's your follow through. And whether it's referencing case studies or third party credibility, but being prepared. I would add in the word being intentional. Be intentional with your structure, be intentional with your outbound prospecting, be intentional with your follow up. Being prepared is another way of being intentional. I see too many reps when they manage to get the call, they don't do a call plan. They're just winging it. And yet you heard Christian say, be prepared. That comes across in the call. If you're winging it with me now, you're going to wing it if I sign up with you, and that makes me nervous. But if you seem like you're prepared, you're respecting my time, you have good structure, you can name drop other credible resources, you can give me case studies to back up your statements, you're very believable. When people are, think about it, if Christian is promising 6 and 7 figure deals, if he's engaged, then that means Christian himself is probably I don't know your Christian's pricing, but I'm going to guess Christian himself is probably a premium service for a premium result. So for he and his team to achieve the results that they're achieving, they need to be able to project that we're safe, that we're worth it. This is what you've got. You've got confidence, because people, when they buy from you, they're entrusting you to not let them down, because if it doesn't go well, their job is at risk. And that's what a lot of reps don't understand. So it's so much about what he's talking about here is relational and trust. And it goes back to your workflow. And just like you were taking, 10 minutes minimum per to kind of do the research, that was intentional, right? You're not winging it. You're not trying to use bots or shortcuts. You're physically being intentional. That's what all this process is. Okay, so you've been doing this a year and a half. You started from scratch. What was the biggest thing you did starting from scratch that started getting you the success and the goals that you desired?
Yeah. I'm going to share something a little bit unconventional, but I think
do it.
I would assume some of the listeners on here do aspire to own their own business someday or do something on their own. And I was in the same boat. I was a business owner for about 15 years. Then I went and worked at advertising and marketing agencies for about 10. But in the back of my mind, I knew that I wanted to be doing something on my own again. And I knew it was probably something in the advertising and marketing space, but I wasn't sure what, when, or how. So what I actually started to do is I wanted to build up a profile for myself. I wanted to build some awareness. I wanted to start branding myself. I wasn't even sure what, when, or how though. So I started creating content and I posted it on LinkedIn. I started connecting with people in that space on LinkedIn. I started developing an email list, and it was pure value. Keep in mind, I was working at an agency at the time. I was not trying to sell any services. I didn't even know what services to sell at the time. It was really just about putting myself out there. And this went on for about 2 years before I decided that I was going to, move on and start my own company. But when I did move on and start my own company, I had already developed a little bit of a following from agency owners and MarTech owners because of the content that I was producing. And I was back to kind of the trust portion of it. I was consistent in that content creation that I did. And there was a level of trust then that people had. So when I decided to make this move and I reached out to some people that were now in my network, they were, I would love to, work with you. I'd love to take a chance and see how this goes with you. So I was starting from scratch. Yes, I had no clients day one, but I had laid some groundwork, for 2 years beforehand. So I share that story, again, because I think whether that is you deciding that you want to work on your own, like I did, or even if you just want to, start to brand yourself as an expert in a certain area, there is a long tail that will come with that will help your sales career down the road. And I think a lot of people are thinking very short term, how am I going to get the sale tomorrow, versus thinking about how am I going to build a brand, a personal brand around myself that's going to, hopefully help me for years and years to come.
So why I love what Christian just said, a couple years ago, I had a talk that I had created that I gave at a variety of shows for a brief period of time. Because talks get tired. But it was called Sell Like a Marketer. That's what it's called. And it was saying you as a sales rep need to learn from marketing and what they do. Now listen to what Christian just told you. Now listen to what I told people in that session. I said, you need to become a branding expert. Only the branding is you. How do you brand you? You need to write content just like marketers write content. You need to appear on podcasts and webinars, just like marketers do. You need to start your own podcast, like marketers do. You need to do a newsletter, like marketers do. You need to build an email opt-in list, like marketers do. And in the early time, all you're doing, because marketers are not monthly or quarterly base. They're much longer horizon. So they're building up this brand equity by adding value for the first, 6, 12, maybe 18 months, 2 years in the case of Christian, before you start to harvest that. And the beauty is you can use all that content, that branding though, right away in your messaging, in your sequencing, as part of your credibility, as part of your selling technique, because you can share your own content depending on the objections you get or the questions you get. There you go. That's exactly what Christian talked about, because he's committed to his craft, he invested it, he's in a highly competitive marketplace, and he's been able to distinguish himself. And it all goes back because he knew what the problem was that his audience had, and he was able to approach it in a professional, methodical, intentional, sophisticated, outbound prospecting manner that resonated with his audience. And then he committed to continually optimizing and improving and iterating with a series of sprints so he can increase his results. And he's been in business for 1.5 years, and the outcomes speak for themselves. Folks, that is Christian Banach. He is christianbanach.com. Christian, what's the best way to get a hold of you, my friend?
Yeah, christianbanach.com, like you said, is our website. You can certainly go there. I'm on LinkedIn, Christian Banach. You can search me. I think I'm the only Christian Banach out there. Happy to connect with anybody. If any of this resonated and you'd like to dive deeper, happy I answer all the emails and happy to have conversations with everybody.
I love it. I love it. There you go, my friends. A case study. I can call it a case study. It's actually just Christian being incredibly transparent, vulnerable, and honest with us, sharing what he's done and what you can do when you find yourself in a competitive marketplace where it's hard to separate yourself from the pack. The good news is it's not as hard as you think. The bad news is you have to be intentional. Follow his technique and you will be successful just like he is. My name is Darryl. That's Christian. We're going to get out of here, but I'll be back next week. In the meantime, please share this show. Give us reviews, like, comment. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit the bell, because, hey, you should always hit the bell. That's what I always say. Can never have enough bell, which is not to be confused with more cowbell. Completely different situation. My name is Darryl. I'll talk to you guys soon. Take care. Bye-bye.